I'm Stan. I also came from the US, like Johannes would have done. I'm very privileged to be an American citizen, so a lot of what is going on right now is impacting me less. In fact, my co-founder, Gabby, would maybe have been around, and Clemens, who's the head of our community here at Ethos in Cambridge, if you'll raise your hand and designate yourself. We all feel really blessed to be here. It's a chaotic time. I come from Boston. Who knows where Boston is? Who's been to Boston? Okay, been to Boston? Okay, still some folks. I'm glad. We are, like Deep Tech Momentum, also almost a year old. April 14th is our birthday. And specifically Ethos, other than being another pretty collection of startup founders, much like the people in this room and many of the other slides that were on this board, has been an incredible center of gravity for the AI developer community in Cambridge, Massachusetts, since about a year now. And why is it called Ethos? What are these people doing? Well, first of all, these are about 40 or 50 startups at this point. They're always growing. They've raised about $25 million or so in the last 6 months, so not quite at deep tech levels, but these folks are building. And what are they building? Why are they together? And why am I calling this Ethos? And why am I here tonight talking to you? There's a key word here that is responsible. And I kind of want to call attention to this idea of what a community can be used for. I think that Startup Grind shares a lot of our fundamental values, actually. And one of the things we just talked about tonight and through communicating with each other is that communication is part of the basis for it, it's part of the foundation, but community is a lot more than just communication. Same root, but a community is capable of quite a lot. And when you harness a community for good, I am going to illustrate to you, I hope, in my little few words I'm going to exchange with Aemal tonight, why you can actually use it to start defining responsible AI. So I'm going to start by asking who has an idea already, what would responsibility mean to them in the context of AI? Anything? No answer is wrong. Even a word is acceptable. Yes?
When you speak about responsibility in the world of AI, I automatically think of character AI and the kids, like the whole story around the kids.
Okay, that's a very interesting one. I actually was speaking with the creator of Character AI in San Francisco a little while ago on this topic, and that's a very specific context. So what you've immediately identified as responsible AI is in context. It has both a use case, it has an ethical question, yes?
I was going to go with another answer.
An answer?
Maybe also for the climate, like how is responsible there? Can we done better? Can we avert the climate crisis with a better cooling? Or
amazing. So how, in fact, AI is being trained, how you are supplying power to data centers. My own personal background is actually in renewable energy, so I'm glad you bring this up. You'll hear a little bit more about me later. I'll take one more thought. Oh, wow, now we've got everyone. Okay, one of you, who's got the mic?
I was thinking more in the direction of, so since it is responsible AI, and in everybody's mind there is data security and data privacy, but one step ahead, like since the recent trend everyone has seen of Ghibli art and copyright, so I would think more in the direction of responsibility, like what are we training on? Are we training based on taking permission from the creators? Or is it just blind training and then using it, and then when the results come out after that, thinking about it?
So ownership, the question of equity, of data sovereignty, of individual liberty. All of this is included, and all of this, and every example you have given is contextualized, going back to your point. It's very difficult to talk about a topic as big as AI or as big as responsibility without quite a lot of context. And that is where our community comes in. That's in fact, so sorry. This is not the slide deck that I put on, but I am going to skip to the beginning because clearly we accelerated too quickly.
You're doing fabulous.
We're going to skip back to this, which is what ethos actually means. And this is the point that we're fundamentally on. So what we were just doing is we were starting to get a sense of, in this room, we have some preconceptions, we have some beliefs. Ethos is literally that. It's the character of shared beliefs held by a community. In the context of ethos, pathos, logos, it's what you use to build trust. What all of us need as AI developers, if that's something that you are, is we need trust in our technology to do many things. We need it to access sensitive data. It cannot be a very strong or relevant or helpful system that we are going to draw on to give someone added value unless they are going to trust us to take care of, for instance, something that they may own. So it's an excellent point that you brought up. It may also be the case that with character AI, you may not trust talking with an AI agent or in fact setting up a virtual conversation for your child unless you know what some of the implied outcomes may be. In general, ethos is about building trust, and community is very well poised to do that. And so how do you literally do that? So what are we? Why am I here? Well, first of all, we started in June 2024 admitting leading entrepreneurs who are developing actively something in AI that we had absolutely no exposure to. I did this out of an interest in interviewing all these people and asking them, what are you doing that a community could help you with concretely? What would be the aspects of that community that you would value? What would go into a physical location, and what would that give you in terms of credibility? What would you need to learn? How could we define responsible AI together? I asked a lot of these questions. And so fundamentally, I wasn't just looking at the time at entrepreneurs. I had researchers. This is, if you can see from this was our very first little spot right across the street. That is MIT campus. And so you've also got a lot of researchers. You've got a lot of people just hacking on the weekends. And so you've got an interesting crowd of people. And what I discovered is that a lot of places want this kind of motion. And Berlin, I'm happy to say, is actually the second place almost a year later where we have launched our community. So again, Clemens here in the crowd has been a part of the spearhead of that. And so you will learn more about what's happening on the ground even after I go back to Cambridge in the coming weeks, months, etc. So I'm very happy to be in Berlin. I've got a week left. This is my 5th time here. And I've gotten to learn that this is actually really one of the ecosystems that I think Europe should place a lot of hope in. And I say that having spent time in San Francisco and many of these other places on this map actively with expansion dialogues. There are some specific reasons, but I think we'll talk about that on the panel. For now, I want us to take away the idea that not only were you folks that welcomed us. This was back in August when we just decided to explore here. This is my other co-founder, Jean. When people showed up for us, we were convinced very quickly that actually the environment here is perfect for instantiating this loop. And this is the core of what I will be talking about tonight, which is that it is easy for us to think that the government or our policymakers have enough knowledge about what we are building to regulate effectively. And that is not true. Sadly, it typically falls to people like DTM to set up a conference, or to us to set up a lunch with a policymaker, or someone to, like Startup Grind folks are doing tonight, gather entrepreneurs and actually hear and listen from them what is in fact going to impact them, their lives, what they're building, how is what they're building going to affect society, and have an understanding of what is coming next in 1 year, in a month, in 10 years. This is very, very difficult for policymakers. And so what I realized after my first 100 interviews was something very unusual. So I'm quite young. I'm about 25 years old, and something happened after these 100 interviews. I was asked by our governor in Massachusetts to consult for her AI task force for the state on what we should be doing with the innovation ecosystem. I was like, well, why am I here? There are all these giants of industry. And it just turned out not a lot of people had gone around to a lot of AI startups asking them what they're building, what's important to them, how regulation might affect them. In a lot of ways, it's the gathering of data that is very central to guiding responsible AI. And so you can start with values. The EU AI Act, which we're going to discuss tonight, is a very core component of that. It is some way of codifying your values. The truth is that we have built some internal consensus within Ethos around values that we have. We think that it is better to have more close relationships rather than fewer, for instance, in society. We believe that it is, in fact, better to have a greater distribution of wealth and monetization of data within society than not. And so we do take a moral stance on many of these issues, also around sovereignty, and we'll talk about that. But unfortunately, you and me and everyone else, we can write down our values and they just don't mean much in practice. And all of this sounds very fluffy until you start to put it into practice in a way that makes sense to developers and to people that will ultimately be the consumers and adopters of artificial intelligence. So that's why we have a global community. It's across 30 different industries, actively having users give it feedback, give us 2 hours a month of their time to start to build best practices that characterize responsible AI. And you can bet that the ethical implications all three of you brought up are things that have been talked about in our community. And what we are trying to do is keep this loop going, because once a startup has come to us with a problem, ultimately it often boils down to how can I show that I have done the due diligence, that I have done the hard work of making something trustworthy such that I can bring it into a really critical use case that can change the world for the better. And if you do not have any experts, if you do not have any norms, if you do not have any community behind you communicating what this is over time, you just may fall into a trap, which is that you may spend a lot of time trying to figure out frameworks and compliance and reading a bunch of papers about what responsible AI is. And I'm afraid that's not really what I'm here to talk about tonight. It's actually that you need a community for that. We can't individually shoulder that burden. So that's the essence of it. That's what ethos is. And from those discussions, we start to get to some norms, which we increasingly are trying since 1 year now almost to make more helpful. And so here in Berlin, we've got this very first spot. Sorry, Neo House, wherever Sarah is, to advertise another space that you can come and work. But it's not an open door, I'm afraid. You do have to apply. So I hope that sets us on peaceful terms. We've got an amazing spot at CSC Berlin in Kreuzberg, where we're gathering in each of our stations, just like in Cambridge, 100 leading innovators to help us learn about what we actually don't know. So unlike an accelerator or something that would be for-profit, we are a non-profit foundation. We're focused actually on finding people that are different than what we know. So if I have, and I do have right now, a lot of representation in healthcare in Boston, that might not surprise you to those who have been there. We have autonomous marine solutions for self-navigation of vessels. We have people who are doing hardware in the brain-computer interface space. We have a lot of examples of things that you here in Berlin don't have, and you have a lot of examples of industries that are thriving here, by the way, especially in the creative industries, I've noticed, not only, that give us more context. And so all of what we're doing is building this context, building these norms. And so I think I'll close out on that idea that if you are building something, if you are an investor, if you are a startup, if you are a community like Startup Grind, which I thank you again for inviting us into that tonight, or any of the people that you heard speak tonight, this is a communal effort to do something to show that a community, when curated correctly, is capable of starting to define responsible AI in a way that is useful to everyone else. And so you're going to hear more about how we plan on transmitting some of this stuff when I'm on the panel. I think this is probably a good place not to get too deep into details or try to explain anything more than you should be excited to hear from Aemal more about a very specific context for where responsible AI definitions are needed. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to my co-panelists. I think it's enough for now. Thank you, everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aemal Sayer. I'm a software engineer, 23, almost 24, actually. I started pretty young, but I'm almost 40. Married, 2 kids, 1 year and 6 years, and pumping content on my LinkedIn and on my YouTube like a crazy man. And I give free workshops every month in Berlin about AI agents. I've built an AI agent for dative. That's what we are going to look at today. And also, one thing that I am really passionate about is this so-called computer use, or the way AI agents could use a computer in order to operate tasks. And that's what I'm going to show you. It's an open source framework. I'm building it in public. Every Sunday, I record a video and then I put it on my YouTube channel. So you can follow me along if you're a developer. By show of hands, who is a developer? Okay, nice. So I have got like 3 contributors at least, promise. not even contributing, just promise that he will contribute, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, I'm going to keep it very short. I'm specializing in only building AI agents. I help SMEs. For the matter of fact, I'm building right now an AI agent for deep tech momentum, and I will have a very nice masterclass about AI agents and deep tech momentum. If you're there, please come in my masterclass. I'm sure you'll like it. So I speak 5 languages. I'm so much a geek, and I'm so much a management guy, so you can talk to me about the startup lingo. I've done 3 startups and 2 agencies in the past 9 years. Those are all the companies I built. I don't want to bother you with all of them, but at least this one, VoiceKit, was an AI agent, a voice AI agent that I built in 2023 and 2024. Unfortunately, due to lack of funding, we couldn't pursue. We had to shut it down. Now I take that experience of AI agents and also having a master's degree in AI, a bachelor's degree in computer science. I bring that knowledge forward to the marketplace, and I'm a consultant. I help big companies build AI agents, especially those companies that you see on this logo, starting from Klarna, Siemens, Allianz, and so on. So my specialty goes in this one corner of building AI agents. It's that kind of an AI agent that does not have an API. It's a legacy system. It's pretty old. It's running on a Windows XP. Built in Visual Basic 6. If those 2 technologies ring a bell, that means you're more than 40 years old. That being said, before I go on, I would like to give a very quick round of like what is an AI agent. In very, very simple terms, we can say that an AI agent is like a digital coworker that learns, reasons, and executes tasks on your behalf. I would like to give the round now to you guys. Anyone want to explain what is an AI agent? And then I'll take it back. Who wants to explain what is an AI agent? Not those who were in my workshop. I know a few people, not Kamala here.
Digital coworker that learns, reasons, and executes tasks on your behalf.
Yeah, but that's my definition. Come on, like paraphrase it. Try to say something else. Like, what do you think is an AI agent? I want to do something on my YouTube series, like ask 100 people on these short formats, the reels, and ask them what's an AI agent. So video number 1 goes to you.
To me, an AI agent is an autonomous piece of software that can do many things like what we do by looking at the real world and responding to it.
Perfect. Real world, responding. It has some memory. It can perform tasks. It's autonomous. The workflows goes like that. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to keep the presentation short. I'll maybe we can skip all the examples. We can talk about that during the networking time to just keep the presentation short. But since we are talking about responsible AI, and we're talking about AI with like all these possible negative impacts of an AI application, I'd like to talk a little bit about EU AI Act. And then you know why the AI agent I'm building can be 100% EU AI Act compatible or compliantable, if that's a word. But this is a disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer. I cannot be a lawyer. It's just a few presentations about EU AI Act. If you want to know if your startup is actually compliant with EU AI Act, you need to consult a lawyer. So, first thing first, how do you find it? First, go to Google, type EU AI Act PDF, and then find this website where you see eurolexeuropa.eu. And at least in this video, I will leave the link, because that's the official one. The other ones are just a copy of it. It can happen that there is some change in the text. It's 144 pages of PDF file. What you will basically find as a gist of that is that it has the possible risks of applications coming out of an AI application, categorized in these 4 categories. Starting from unacceptable risk, which is basically all those things that could be like social scoring, something that to the nation level implemented, and then discrimination can happen systematically. Going to I risk, which is kind of more or less medical applications, something that a life of a person can be endangered. Coming to limited risk, it's more kind of like those systems. It's also known as transparency risk. It's all those AI applications that could discriminate against something like an HR system, like you're sending your CV based on your ethnicity or your gender or your conditions, you're discriminated, that's limited risk. And something that's a low-hanging fruit, which my software or the focus area I have is called minimal risk. It's kind of like an AI that spams, like filters the spam emails on your inbox. And so is the case with accounting, and my area of specialty is accounting and bookkeeping and taxes and everything that you can do with an AI agent that has something to do with accounting software. And Dativ, we will see about Dativ, I'll just talk about that in a minute. These are some examples of this. I will again skip all the examples just for the sake of time. Otherwise, we would really enjoy this game I play it with in my workshops. So some of the, okay, this is one small announcement I would like to do. I'm building an EU AI Act chatbot. It's called RegioBot.de. I'm building it with a tech lawyer, Simon. We're just starting it, and we would highly appreciate your input if you use it and then provide some insights. There are a lot of information about EU AI Act. Like, for example, Aleph Alpha is kind of like in that very high end because their models can be used everywhere, or Mistral from France and DeepL, the Google Translate alternative, and so on and so forth. Okay, now let's come to my project. The project that I'm building is something that is similar to this. We'll see it in just a minute as an action. But what is interesting is I started this on 19th of January this year, and it has come a long way. It's called blind clicks for a reason, because it blindly clicks everywhere, and whenever it gets stuck, then an LLM or a vision-based engine helps it to discover what is stuck, and then it solves it. The architecture goes like that. We have the UI loaded inside a kind of like a machine that can be scaled across the continents. So every single AI agent can get like one of those machines for themselves. There is this one component that's basically robotically clicks things around that immediately initiates clicks, and then it takes all those clicks from a saved sequence. And then whenever it gets stuck, an LLM basically finds where it got stuck, like computer use and from Anthropic and Operator from OpenAI, and then it wakes up and then unresolves that problem that it has. If that was not resolved, then it notifies a human in the loop, and then that human logs in through that screen, that virtual computer that's sitting somewhere, and then it resolves that. This is how it looks. There's a chat box. We'll see it in a minute. This is basically a computer that I have mounted here. It's a browser, basically. And this computer has like terminals, web browsers. There I loaded Dativ. By show of hands, who knows what's Dativ? Okay, that's good. So Dativ is an accounting software that's like everywhere in Germany. I'm not sure across Europe, but at least in DACH region, it's very, very famous. And I'm automating Dativ. Why is it called blind clicks? Because it blindly takes an X and Y coordinate of that checkbox based on a training that can come literally from a screen recording. You do the screen recording, you upload it on this platform, and then it takes that X and Y coordinate and then clicks, and then it performs it. For coders, it is based in TypeScript. It literally writes like a few lines of code. That's the whole brain of this blind clicks. And then the entire brain behind it, the vision, is a whole new thing. So basically, let's have a quick look how this performs. Hi, my name is Aemal Sayer. I'm an AI engineer specializing in building AI agents for SMEs in Germany, especially EU AI Act and GDPR compliant. I built an AI agent for Dativ, the corporate accounting system that a lot of companies in Germany use. Let me show you how it works. So basically on the left you have a control panel where you see all the chat, you have certain buttons, you can type some text. On the right side you'll see Dativ opening now. I'll ask my AI agent to upload some invoices. So I will click first and upload these invoices. And then, can you please upload these invoices in Dativ? it will open Firefox, then it will open a new tab, and then it will click on Dativ login page. So this is the moment when a human in the loop is needed. In almost any AI agent, we will need a human in the loop to unblock the requirements for AI agent to pursue the work. So right now I have to log in. I'll grab my two-factor authentication and log into Dativ. There you go. Now I'm logged in and I'm ready to continue. I'll just say done. What it will do is it will start uploading all those invoices that I have given. It will upload all of them at once and then reconcile one by one all of them. In this particular example, I only took 3 of them just to make the point, but it can be done for thousands of invoices if needed. So it opens the invoice, enters the invoice number, opens the date of the invoice, corrects it, changes the status, the payment date, goes to the next one, and it just continues in that manner until all of the invoices are done. You can also optionally see the logs from here, everything that's happening behind the scenes. It's going through every step. Everything is logged, so you don't need to be worried about if something goes wrong. Once it's done, it gives you that message, and this message basically is the final message that all the invoices are uploaded. In case you're worried if something went wrong, you can go to recent activities. You see that you did a bulk activity, and then you can roll it back if you need to do so. This is just an example of Dativ, but this kind of a technology can be implemented on any sort of corporate or SME software, be it an ERP from SAP, be it Dativ, or be it a custom web application or desktop application that can be automated without the need for an API. This is using operating system level clicks and typing, just similar to Operator by OpenAI and computer use by Anthropic. This is a proprietary project that I'm building in public on my YouTube channel. If you're interested to have a discussion about this project. So literally, that is what I'm building. And what's very interesting about it, which the other Aemal also said in the video, can you bring the slides, please? Which is, I'm building it in public. Like literally, it has a very nice backstory. This is the YouTube channel where I build it. It's now in episode number 11, so 11, 12 weeks of work on it. The first episode, like in this episode, I literally shared the story of why am I building it. My wife is a programmer. She works at SAP now. 5 years ago, she switched her career to from financial accounting to software development. And I have 3 companies in Germany, 2 GmbH, 1 UG. And you can imagine, as a German entrepreneur, I receive a lot of invoices all day long. Like whenever I open my post box, I close my eyes and then open my clothes, and then I see that there are more invoices, always. So I take it to my wife, poor girl, spends like 10 hours literally scanning, putting invoices, finding invoices, downloading everything. It's beautifully recorded here in a very raw format. So what I'm doing is I'm building this for her. Once it's done, you will see it from this storyline of every week doing this one video. Then I'm expecting her to kind of like save 9 hours if she wants, then she can spend that with me and with my children. So that's the whole backstory. Thank you so much.
The promise of AI in the age of EU sovereignty and resilience. I just want to remind everybody again of the topic. Do we still need to do a little introduction? Why are you here today?
Ask them.
maybe you can share a story of the weirdest thing you've experienced in Berlin.
It's Berlin. Anything can happen.
Who has been to the club Zur Klappe? Zur Klappe. Ah, Clemens. Didn't know that.
Zur Klappe.
Would you mind explaining to the audience what Zur Klappe is?
Isn't that one that is in the old U-Bahn?
It's in a toilet.
Okay, no, then it's not one.
It does look like it would be like the school underground club. It turns out it's a renovated public toilet. Its tagline is "It's the nastiest club in Berlin." That was weird.
Thank you. So, Sam and Amal, thank you so much for all the introduction. So, I want to go from the background. Like, what made you to come into AI space? What was the motivation to get involved yourself with AI?
Okay, that's tough. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, when I started coding, it was 2000, so I was like 14, 13. And professionally, I started working for money in 2001. So I was always going to this one bookshop where I would buy the thickest book. I saw this blue book that's like that thick. I bought it. It had like artificial intelligence on it. It looked like intelligence, nice. I wanted to look intelligent to my fellow programmers. It was a 1-year-long diploma in information technology, kind of like showing you how to write Visual Basic 6 code. And since then, I kind of like, that was my first tap. But when I came to Germany, I got a scholarship from DAAD for doing my master's in AI. That was very intensive entry. This was 2015. And then since then, for all the clients that I've worked, it has been always a sort of an AI application to the application layer, not to the core model. But it has been for quite a while, at least for the past 7-8 years, intensively.
Awesome. And you, Sam?
I became deeply obsessed with AI and its potential when I realized how limited and how limiting humans were in some of the most critical systems that are in our world today. I mentioned I come from a renewable energy background. I specifically researched at some point how to integrate water grids with electric grids. This is kind of a very niche topic, but it turns out that there's a great potential to stabilize electric grids that use renewable energy by hooking them up to existing potential energy, aka giant batteries that are not made out of lithium, but made out of water. And so if you think about what is required to use a water grid as a battery, you need to have a number of sensors and a number of switches. And actually, overall, you are dealing with more information and more switches than any number of humans can reliably be able to pull and calculate at one time, at least in today's world. I did this research and I was standing in the dispatch center. Who knows what a dispatch center is in electric grid terms? Well, you know that it's a very highly guarded facility. You have to go past the military to get in there. And this particular dispatch center I was in was the central dispatch for the nation of Cape Verde. Who knows where Cape Verde is? Some folks? Yeah, good. Means it's a small electric grid, small island country. And that was still a very highly guarded facility. They had approximately 3 people on shift at that point. They do 72-hour shifts. You may be wondering, why would a human be doing this type of stuff? Why is this still the system we're working with? We still have a brain that is still very often the best solution that we have for processing quite a lot of data and making decisions. And what I realized working on the energy transition is that actually to allow renewable energy, we needed to be able to process more information. So cutting my answer shorter now, I realized energy moves slowly, it requires a lot of capital, and the more I hung out with more entrepreneurs who were building across different fields, I realized actually it was the technology that was horizontal that could make fundamental, broad impact, and that's where I needed to be focused rather than in the industry.
Awesome, thank you. So, coming to the AI scene, current scene of AI in Europe, what excites you the most? Where do you think, what excites you the most about AI in Europe?
That's a very good question. I remember this couple of weeks ago, I did a LinkedIn post about it. I woke up early in the morning and I was like super sad that I'm in Berlin in Germany. All the cool things are happening in Silicon Valley. And the same day I went back to bed super happy. You know why? Because I thought, like, if I want to build AI agent, which country is the best country I can be? The country that has a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of paperwork. so I went back. Yeah, and then I said, no, I'm not going to move to the US. I'm going to stay here. Yeah. So that excites me a lot about Germany and Europe as a whole, building AI agents and kind of like solving real problems that really can be solved even with an email. You can switch a letter with an email, but if you bring the big hammer, and which would be the agentic frameworks, and that's what I'm excited about.
I think if we imagine wine, I'm going to use a lot of analogies tonight, as something that we respect and we buy more of when it comes from a certain DOC, denominazione origine controllata. It's the idea that you have certain rules and certain territory. This is at least an Italian concept that has spread around the world, that we may trust more that wine and we may actually pay more for it. I think similarly, if you pass muster in the German market, it means you've done a lot of work. And for what it's worth, the fact that there is a market in a place similar to what Aemal said that holds a pretty high bar, that is actually often a slower but reliable adopter in the digital age. I think German startups have still a significant credibility abroad, speaking as an American. And I think that reputation certainly is something not to be discarded.
Great to know that. And what do you think the role of startups play in advancing the AI in Europe? What startups can offer for advancing the AI in Europe?
Well, that's a question I think both of us can answer, especially seeing it from two different perspectives. I come from a startup world. I did 3 startups in the past 9 years. Unfortunately, we don't have impressive numbers as compared to the rest of the world, particularly to the North American countries. But it should leave us with a good, positive vibe. Why? Because there is a lot of room to grow. Sam has mentioned in his talk, like, we have a lot of innovative solutions in the US where there's a Neuralink company taking care of like brain-computer interface. You think about something happens on the other side of the world through a robot. Even not typing and mouse clicking, literally from your brainwaves to an action in a machine. That sort of crazy ideas do not flourish here. We had only Lilium, or have still Lilium in Munich, which due to lack of funding had to be acquired by a Chinese company. They were building a flying car. It's a very futuristic thing. Being like Germany as the giant of automotive industry, not on timely manner investing on electric vehicles, now not on timely investing on AI. This is all depressing, but at the same time, as I said, for entrepreneurs are this breed that's like 1% of the population, and they will always find a solution for a problem and they'll get out. So I'm super pumped about the opportunities that we still have in the EU, especially when it comes to AI, and especially when it comes to responsible AI, because we have EU AI Act that's kind of like a framework that's protecting us.
I'm going to start with a statistic. Does anyone know in flops? I've presented this to some of you before, so if you heard me say it, looking for others. How many flops were installed or are planning to be installed by the UAE this year?
Who knows what a flop is?
Who knows what a flop is? Oh, okay, we've got actually one gentleman. Would you like, what, behind you, it's not you.
Explain what a flop is.
Whatever you can explain from our question, you can take it as you like.
I don't have the estimates about how many of them are going to be installed.
The flop is the basic operation of the computer. Typically have multiplication like teraflop.
Correct.
I see. My guess from floppy disk was not so far away.
No, actually, this is not bad. So for reference, the largest data center in Europe that I'm aware of is 3.5 petaflops. One exaflop, by the way, is 1,000 petaflops. And the UAE will have installed 150 exaflops this year.
Global competition.
How many data centers we have is less of a concern for startups, frankly, actually today, than innovation. Actually, one of the hopeful things is that while European infrastructure is lagging behind very significantly in terms of the capacity for data centers, most startups shouldn't care. And in fact, it makes it all the more important to support them. So if you look in the macro sense, which I believe your question is intended to illuminate, actually, the reason that startups should exist is because they can do with much less, and they can prove with much less what a large company may never plan for, may never actually begin to try, because they will look at it at a scale that is just impossible. And so a startup can make headway, can prove out a concept even when not all of the pieces fit together. And actually, at the end of the day, to be an exporter of technology rather than just an operator able to host a single instance of a very, very large model in your country may be more valuable both to the economy and to the talent that you may be able to use in the long term. So I think that actually puts a spotlight on startups versus very large, for instance, frontier foundational model companies.
Okay, yeah, nice to know. So also, like, what are the main challenges you see? Like, why all these startups are not really good in Europe compared to other countries? What are the main challenges? How, maybe, I don't know, who can support? I don't know that, but maybe you have more experience about it.
You're asking all these sad questions. We're going to go home crying. Yeah.
Optimism.
Optimism. Now I'm trying to kind of like optimistically answer it, but still do not sugarcoat it. First thing first, I think it's risk-taking mentality. I've been living in Germany for the past 10 years. I worked with Germans before for 7 years, so 17 years. Germans kind of like, Eric, you're German, you can correct me here if I'm wrong. Germans tend to kind of like wait and take their time before something happens. They say that, I'm gonna perfect it. Is that true, or do I misunderstand it and I wasted all those 17 years of my life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So based on that context,
It's actually not that. It's overthinking it. It's
exactly,
like,
over-engineering. Yeah, a little bit. Like our friend in the crowd knew what is a flop. Nobody else knew, and he was worried about not knowing exact number, like exactly with decimal points. That's the German mentality. Like, we want to do things very, very good, like to the perfect level. Since I was a consultant for the past 9 years, I switched teams every 6 months. So that means I experienced way more German tech teams than anyone probably in this room, unless you work for 10 years as a consultant and your name is Aemal Sayer. So I experienced this firsthand. I saw every team I went, usually I was focusing on the Series A, Series B startups. They just made their breakthrough, now they're restructuring everything, and they hire me to help them with restructuring, or also those corporations who hired me and doing their job. Like, who cares about 100 milliseconds? I click a button, I see a text on the screen after 100 milliseconds or 200 milliseconds, nobody cares. But Germans do care about that 100 millisecond. So that is a mentality thing. And innovation do not happen with perfection. Innovation happens with imperfection. You need to be imperfect first, and then you keep validating it over time, and then you get it. One thing that Sam mentioned the other day when we had a lunch at CIC, you said, like, in the same floor, people working together, they have better productivity than working in 2 floors, same building. And now, if you talk about that innovation, that collaboration happening, if it's happening like in closed environments and you let them do mistakes, we'll have more innovative products than any other country.
Well, I'll take that inspiration, and also as a compliment, because many of us in this room are in the business of doing that. Where I come from is known as the most innovative square mile on the planet. This is something I had the chance to introduce Clemens to when he visited in Boston. And I was explaining to him just exactly this concept. And we were comparing Boston and Berlin, and we were thinking about, what in fact are the characteristics of the ecosystem that are infrastructure that we can all do something about, that government can do something about, that startups can do something about, that investors can do something about. And there are answers on all of these fronts. It is trying to concentrate. It is trying to increase the communication. It is trying to organize more startup grand events. It is trying to have more ethos. It is trying to have more deep tech momentum. This all happens well. The closer together it can happen, the better. And I mean that physically. It's a challenge. It requires leadership. It requires some level of collaboration, which is often difficult when you have a very large geography like Berlin. But it is possible. It requires sometimes wet labs and maker spaces and a lot of other things to also be together at a secondary level, because ultimately AI that is applied in the physical world will be actually more impactful, economically speaking, than just software. And I think my last point is that startups can play a role in this. I don't take the pessimism perspective. I don't want to do anything with that. I just want to look at what are startups building. So you just saw an example from Aemal Regubot. There's a similar project actually in Ethos right now. I'll connect you to, having seen more of this, doing something along these lines. And in the US, there are several that are actually improving and decreasing the burden for startups with things like compliance, with things like safety, with actual protocols that can assess whether an agent, for instance, is doing what you think it's supposed to. And ultimately, we actually have the responsibility to build trust in technology. And we cannot hope to change society's behaviors, I believe. So we can choose to build infrastructure. We can choose to build pathways. We can choose to build frameworks that are easy to use. But in the short term, it does fall to us. And it is our responsibility, I think, to do that.
Wow, so many good points already. I will drive it back to the topic, the promise. I really like a lot of things that you said. If you build something in Germany, you still have high credibility. Everybody knows the bureaucracy is killing the startups here. So if you can overcome this, it means something. And you also think it's a big opportunity, actually, to grow here. All of this sounds nice. And my mother would now say, Eric, I'm afraid. AI is coming. Is it really a promise? What would you tell her?
You want to go first?
I mean, when Elon Musk said efficiency is coming. Efficiency for what? Promise to what?
For love, for spending time with our lives.
Yeah. Well, it's 10 hours per month that she's working on those invoices.
Yes.
Seriously, I think clearly AI promises to augment many human capabilities. It also promises to expand to completely new territory where all of us can agree there will be both disruption and then major improvements to people's lives. I think, and fundamentally, any technology, whether it is a nuclear bomb or whether it is a nuclear power plant, can be harnessed in different ways. I think it is really, unfortunately, very much a responsibility to dictate how, and I think ultimately it is developers that have the biggest responsibility right now as society starts to catch up and become more AI literate. What I would say is that there is fundamentally a huge promise to, for instance, in the health space, completely transform people's access to quality healthcare, or in education, completely transform access to the knowledge of the world in a way that requires fewer and fewer of very precious resources of teachers, and actually emphasizes the human relationships that mentors have, for instance, with mentees. So across the board, you see that there is capacity for bettering people's lives. I define, by the way, betterment in someone's life in a very particular way. I believe you have to increase the agency, the meaning, and the belonging that a person experiences. I think that if we have systems in place that will make sure that no one is getting rich off of anything that does not contribute to those three things, then we'll be fine. It will be a very good promise.
Yeah, I think a lot of things you said, my mom doesn't understand.
Okay.
And I would think she's scared about the situation in Germany right now. There's a war around us, there's a lot of spending right now. She thinks, how can Germany spend $1 trillion, right? For all these projects, we do military spending. How can AI help us to still thrive as a country, for her personal life? And I think she's not afraid for herself, she's afraid for us. Like
for the country.
And the country.
For the society, whether her grandchildren or great-grandchildren or the many generations that we don't know of are going back to my point when I opened this talk, are going to have a lot of close friends, or are they going to somehow exist in a virtual reality she no longer recognizes? I think fundamentally what we are talking about has answers in the real world. We have to talk about, for instance, where data is being stored, how it's being monetized, whether servers are hosting local models, whether we are existing in a world where there is some level of independence and decision-making on the ground in communities that hold certain values about how they want to deploy technology, or whether they are essentially renting from another country. There is reason to be concerned, but there's also reason to be hopeful, because ultimately none of this is technically impossible. It requires effort. It requires policy, it requires startups, it requires industry. But I think your mother actually should be glad that you are living in a country that does care fundamentally about the things you just mentioned, and therefore is going to spend money to make sure that it is able to create its own path rather than just follow. And so if there's anything that would reassure her, it would be to say, this country is actually taking this seriously. It is putting it as a budget item that reflects seriousness in a changing world.
Yeah, I really love that. I'm totally with you, I agree, because Europe and Germany is very people-centric. Right now it might slow us down, but I think it will be the biggest reason for success in the future. I want to live in Germany because we care about the people.
I would like to add, Eric, with that, your mother's perspective, and give it a little bit more paint with my son's perspective. He is 6 years old. He is currently building a game with me, a car game. Literally, he sits on my lap, we do some vibe coding, and we're building a game 10 minutes, 15 minutes every day. And he knows AI not as AI, he knows it as Samantha. Samantha from our movie and my startup, Voice Kit, and all the things and all the workshops I give around that concept of voice technology. And sometimes when he asks me something I don't know, he says like, ask Samantha. So the other day he was asking me, similar question to your mother, like, he said like, is Samantha dangerous? And it was like, I was like, that is a very good question to ask. Is Samantha dangerous, or for a 6-year-old, can it be dangerous? To be honest, it's the same question probably our ancestors asked us when we switched from horses to cars. And when the traffic lights were invented, perhaps at some point in time there were no traffic lights and there were a lot of accidents happening. And then they invented traffic lights. So take that analogy, I'm gonna steal some of your analogies today. So take that analogy of traffic light, apply it to EU AI Act. Now EU AI Act is that traffic light and is gonna make sure that we build technology that's not gonna hurt others. When Ash, my son, grows up, he's gonna have a safer future in this country. In my opinion, the future is dangerous, but let's be hopeful that we're not going to use it in a very catastrophic way.
Can I ask something? So, traffic lights, right? There is a knowledge about how that can be used to regulate the car's danger to the society. Around AI, there is actually no positive marketing in the world out there. Like every movie that we watch about AI is like about destruction and what.
Terminator. Yes, the Terminators of the 80s. Yeah, exactly.
So there's no positive marketing for us or the elder generation to see what positive effects it could bring to the world. So is there something as a community we could do, or we could understand more about AI that would give us a positive perspective on what it could do better than what it could destroy in future?
That's a very good question. Just for the
Who's afraid of AI?
good question.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody. I mean, if you're not, this is
It is out of control.
dangerous. Yeah, it could go out of control. Yeah, especially. That's a very good question. Just for the context of the video recording, the question was like, there was no positive. I'm not sure if there was a question, but your message was like, there is no positive messaging on the media when it comes to AI. All the movies are destructive, like from the Terminators to whatever, or what's that movie, Odyssey 2001 or something? That's, yeah.
Machine learning.
Yeah, all of these movies, at the end of the day, AGI comes and then it just annihilates the humanity. So that's the negative. I really like that perspective. We should start talking about positive sides of AI.
Yeah.
Let's switch to that, actually.
Just still go with, I'm never afraid of a weapon, I'm afraid of the person who wields it. Ultimately, really, we just have a society that is still learning how to use these tools. It is doing it slowly, bit by bit. Unfortunately, the UAI Act, I would say it's the first step on my little wheel. There are definitely values there. There are not necessarily a community of projects or positive and negative examples that it draws on in depth that is continuously updated, that give us norms to continue to inform us every day. I think if we get there, and this is obviously self-serving because I believe this strongly, it's what I work on, I do think that those guardrails will become effective. So I'm pretty optimistic and I'm not afraid of the tool. I'm just hopeful that we can figure that out together.
Yeah.
I came across a term a month ago called solar punk. Not a video game.
Solar punk.
Yeah, not like cyberpunk,
Did we
but
open?
it was something to do like with the next 50 years, how we could integrate technology with like green tech and renewable energy to make some robots to help with agriculture and things like this, and optimizing things with the energy efficiency. I don't know much about it, but there was the one thing I heard, it was positive, at least it could be upcoming in the next 50 years, it could work, but I think Sam might know much more about this.
I'll just give one positive example. You know, in the realm of the material world, you're always looking for new materials, literal compounds, to be able to build, for instance, superconductors that sometimes rely on scarce resources. And actually, this is very similar in the drug development space. You're often looking for molecules that you can be able to find the correct composition of that would be cheap to manufacture, synthesize, and so forth, and then to make available to treat a disease. In both of these cases, historically, we as humans just have to plug through an infinitum of different solutions, and then a very small number are tried out in labs and so forth. Ultimately, the speed of innovation to find solutions to many of our problems, or in the renewable energy space and in others, is actually increasing right now. If that's going to give you any hope in your solar punk future, people are doing that in Ethos right now. They're actually doing both of those things, using quantum, using AI, to find new materials that will help to solve the problem of energy demand for AI. And so in general, sometimes these problems help to solve each other.
I think somebody should be part of the game. We have to come to an end soon. We will open to a Q&A in a second. The promise of AI in the age of EU sovereignty and resilience. One question would be, is it a promise? And one way you could think about it is, what would happen if the US tomorrow would cut the internet connection to Europe?
Develop our own AI
without them.
So, can I take that first? Because it is about internet. I'm taking it personal. So, cutting internet means also America is cutting itself from internet, like from the world. So let's take a very practical example. Like right now, you go on any news channel, you hear about tariffs. What if these tariff wars go south and they increase the Microsoft Office license by 50x and companies cannot afford it and they bring LibreOffice, which is a free version of that, and all of you are gonna have trouble using Microsoft PowerPoint presentation building this thing. So right now we are in a pivotal moment, I think. Something is going to happen in the world. It's becoming so political, and I don't know politics in geography, nothing. So something is going to happen about the war. The war near to us, the Ukrainian and Russian war, the German system change, the German GDP being in negative for quite a bit now, 2.5 years or so, and the tariffs and the U.S. isolation. All the UN, the United Nations, USAID shutting down, and all of these things will have a ripple effect, and this ripple effect will come to everyone, like to individual lives of ours, and especially like this sovereignty of like AI and resilience that we should have in EU is a very important topic we should be talking. I'm glad that you guys chose this as a topic. It's a time for us, from small companies, one-man show like my company, to very big companies like Siemens, Allianz, Deutsche Bank, Deutsche Bahn. They should think about one thing, that how can they become 10x more efficient without hiring one more person? And the only rational solution to that is to implement AI, adopt AI. Don't be afraid of it. If you start adopting AI, then you will realize that, oh, it's possible and I can do it with all the regulations in place and I can do it safely. So that's the only message I have.
Who knows what autarky is? Not
Self-sufficiency.
Yes. So where we go. Do you know, mentioning the Ukraine war, one of the markets that Russia was maddest about being locked out of was airplane parts. After they invaded. Turns out that this is a very global industry, and no one likes to be short on parts to fly their planes. And in general, you see that there is a consolidation of supply chain. In fact, this is the global tendency right now, not just in Russia, which was forced to do that, but also in the United States, where, for instance, after the pandemic, we decided to consolidate PPE production. I think actually in general, this is a very worrying trend, that we become less interdependent. I think that actually promotes conflict. I do not think that discussing internet being cut off is really a scenario that any of us are to Aemal's pod, technically considering would be a reality, also because it's not in the interest of the United States. The United States wants Europe to use its AI. I think actually the implications are a little bit more serious. It's that you have three regimes essentially in the world right now when it comes to AI. You have, I think I mentioned this to you the other day, you have the United States, which is more on the side of let's move quickly, break things, solve them once we figure out what the harm is, and let's just give our data to these big corporations and see what happens. That results actually in the world's strongest AI to date. Unfortunately, the pace of that development has slowed down very, very significantly because we have already plateaued in our access to data in the United States. So we are already now losing that battle with China in terms of an authoritarian system that is able to go ahead and just say to a hospital, for instance, give me all your data right now, I'm going to train on it. Turns out that is much more effective than the US if your only objective is producing AI trained on a whole lot of data. And then you've got the EU, which is kind of wondering what camp it lives in. Historically, it's been in the camp of let's just wait and see, and let's regulate so that by the time it reaches us, we are able to say that this is definitely good for society. But actually, there's a great opportunity, which is because you have that mindset, As I said before, you can use that mindset in the market and in the industries that exist here to say we actually are forced to come up with a way to be competitive in an environment where we have to have our whole society trust us and know that this is something that will keep us economically relevant in the world. So the US isn't forced to do that yet. Europe is forced to do that. And so in terms of sovereignty, I think that's why I'm optimistic.
Okay, we wrap the fireside chat up. One word. Is AI a promise for sovereignty and resilience? Yes or no?
One word.
Depends.
Yes.
Maybe. Because it's contextual, yeah.
We have a couple of more yes or no questions. Rapid fire, it's just for the audience to get to know you better. Are you more an introvert or an extrovert?
Ambivert.
Introvert.
Do you think I'm an introvert?
I know your answer. Cat or dog?
None.
Cat.
Both, because my wife likes cats.
Okay. Apple or Android?
Android.
Apple. I'm sorry.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Both, because I'm Persian, I like green tea.
Early bird or night owl?
Both.
Same both for me as well.
Car or bike?
Car. I'm sorry, I'm killing a lot of trees.
Both. Actively.
Berlin or Munich?
Berlin.
Just kidding. Movie or book?
We can compare.
Movie.
Movie?
Yeah, movie.
I want to ask a follow-up question for what Sam mentioned before the rapid fire round. You mentioned that EU already has almost an advantage in the sense that they're waiting to see and evaluate how the AI space shapes up and evaluate whether it's useful for the society in the end. I want to bring up the example of electric vehicles. First, the US started doing it, whether it's manufacturing or the technology, then China caught up, and EU was playing the waiting game to see, let's see if it's advantageous for society, how it plays out. And then when it finally received a positive answer to their questions, it was kind of already too late into the game, and China started flooding EU with its electric vehicles. So now my question is, how is AI, the waiting game for AI, any different from what happened with EVs?
That's a very good question. Yeah, I think that question has a very good rationale to it, because we already lost once as EU, we lost the EV game. Believe it or not, it's very hard to catch up with that competition now. I drive a Volkswagen. I would love to drive an electric vehicle. When I check the options that we produce in Germany, they're first expensive, second they're not as technologically advanced, particularly for the software part of the car. The last startup I did was something to do with cars. It was a voice assistant for car, and we went through an acceleration program called Techstars, and association with Audi Dekkerstadt, and we had access to the car industry, so manufacturers, OEMs. And we went into all these visits with a lot of people. We saw the software that's running inside German cars are not too good. Like, we need advancements. If we extrapolate that example of EVs and car and outdated software, projected to the AI competition right now we have, to be honest, I'm not hopeful that we can be the number one. I'm a realist, but we don't need to be number one in order to thrive. We can be the best option number two, the best option number three, and we are in an era where we are building something as big as internet. And in that sense, the pie is way too big to be number one of that. Even a small slice of this done very, very well will give that sovereignty and the resilience that we deserve.
Fully agree.
May I add, who plays chess here? Who knows the term Zugzwang?
I do.
So would you explain it?
Yeah, if you haven't watched a movie called Mr. Nobody, go and watch it tonight. That exactly explains the Zugzwang's move. It's a move in chess that sometimes you're trapped in a corner that the best move for you is not move. Is that the correct definition?
Yes, and you have to.
And you have to move. So I'm not going to spoil the Mr. Nobody movie for you, but that's based on that concept.
So forced move is the literal translation, and the idea of a forced move is that you don't want to take it, but you have to, and that's where I think Europe finds itself. That's why, in some sense, it's an advantage. It does mean that you will take that move before your opponent does, even if you maybe don't want it. In this instance, I'm describing something very basic, which is that there's a market demand for AI services. There is industry in Europe that can benefit massively from it, and there's a desire to be on par with the rest of the world. And at the same time, there are security dilemmas in terms of being reliant on the rest of the world and not sovereign. Going back to the theme of tonight. And so what I could say is that Europe has all the same ingredients at some fundamental level that China and the US, for instance, might have. You have money, ideas, and talent. These are the classic ingredients for innovation. I was at AI Tinkerers the other night with Aemal. It's the first time we met actually here in Berlin. We host this gathering also in Boston. Here was hosted somewhere else. We've done it as well. And who's been there? Who's been to AI Tinkerers? Some of us? No, none of us? You should go. Little plug for our friends over there. It's a gathering of technical developers every month showing their progress. There's plenty of talent. There's plenty of ideas in Berlin. There's no lack of that here. You could rule that out immediately. Money is not yet mobile enough, so you could do something about that. There are all sorts of incentives from the policy side that can be done. But yes, it's an advantage because there's Zugzwang, because you don't have an option not to make a move in this case. And ultimately, the United States is just not in that position yet. We still fight over copyright. I don't know if you saw the headlines a little while ago, and one of you asked this question. I mean, copyright is like a distraction. I mean, I'm sorry, but the amount of content that is out on the internet that is copyrighted, it's already been trained on. If you want to fight that war, well, you're not only looking at less than 10% of the data that's really relevant. I mean, I'm looking at the 90%. If Europe wants to fight that battle, wants to actually come up with ways for there to be trust and access to the raw materials which can produce strong AI, that's the data. Beyond the money, ideas, and talent, to actually scale anything, you need the raw materials. If you don't have critical minerals, you don't produce renewable energy, for instance, solar cells. And if you don't have that technology and you have the raw materials, then you don't get anywhere. So Europe does have the data, it does have the money, it does have the ideas, it does have the talent. It is forced to figure out how these things work together.
That sounds very promising. We do one more question.
Yeah, so good evening to all the wonderful people present here. So basically before beginning this question, so I am technically software engineer, I have 3 years of experience, but my passion is in the astrology field. So I wanted to ask a question because I have been practicing astrology since 8 years. So can AI predict the future? Because depending upon the data that has been given. So
can you please elaborate on what you practice for the past 8 years? Astrology,
yeah.
In what sense, did you predict the future? Did it work?
Yeah, so let's say for example, if you give the birth details, like date of birth, time of birth,
can we do that with stock?
Yeah, you can do actually, but depends like which stock you are investing in. Yeah. But usually I don't do gambling using the planetary movements.
So the answer to that question is yes, because it is called generative AI. It's predicting the next word. Like an LLM is doing nothing but just predicting the next, even not word, the next letter. So the way LLMs were built was based on this thing that they created, like a huge model of text, large language model, languages that you speak, and it predicts the next word. So if you put all the knowledge of astrology into a model, it would work at least 100x more than that pen and paper way of doing astrology would work.
Yeah, but sometimes the predictions may vary depending upon the data given. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'll be completely contrarian here. If you were to train on all of the predictions on a given day, you would find zero correlations between them in any horoscope. So unfortunately, and this was tried actually by someone.
I tried uploading one person's detail, but
there was an article I actually read about it. Someone who just created an enormous amount of horoscope data and tried to do this, and it turns out that in general, I think if we look at this really fundamentally, whatever past data has told you, you can get future answers. The next word that the cosine correlation will point to, that may or may not be the future. That is just the most probabilistic outcome.
Sorry for that.
All right, thank all of you. I know somebody.